Hello, everybody. So let me give you my thoughts, and then Angela give you a few of hers before we get into questions and answers. I've been ruminating on what this election meant for the Green Party, but also the broader left. And I think we got to face the fact that it wasn't just the Green Party, it was progressive Democrats. They got their butts kicked. And we can see that now with Biden stuffing his administration with deficit hawks and war hawks. And you see in Congress, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has wanted to get on the Energy and Commerce Committee since she first got in there. And a seat opened up. So she said she wanted it. So the corporate leadership recruited a pro-corporate member of the New Democrat Coalition. That was set up by the Democrats, the Democratic Leadership Conference, or as Jesse Jackson used to call it, Democrats for the leisure class. And so the leadership body of the House Democratic caucus, called the Policy and Steering Committee, voted for this woman, Kathleen Rice, over AOC 46-13. And that, I think, tells you the power equation between the corporate Democrats and the progressive Democrats. So this article I have coming out in Counterpunch on Friday is called How Progressive Democrats Almost Reelected Trump. And as I've mentioned here before, if 21,462 votes, as few as that many votes in Arizona and Wisconsin and Georgia, had gone to Trump instead of Biden, Trump would be the next president, not Biden, even though Biden won the popular vote by 7.1 million votes, which means we got to get rid of the electoral college for one thing. But down ballot, Democrats expected to gain in the Senate and take it over. Now they're hoping for a tie with these two races in Georgia. They lost seats in the House. They had targeted 9 chambers of state legislatures to flip. They lost all of them and lost 3 more. So now the Republicans, due to gerrymandering for both state legislative and House seats in 30 states, they have exclusive control of that, where they gerrymander it so their party, the Republicans, is overrepresented in proportion to the vote they receive. That's pretty bad. And of course, the progressive Democrats have no leverage. So, my argument is progressives took themselves out of the election. Once Bernie Sanders lost because the corporate leadership closed ranks against him, the progressives closed ranks behind Biden and never made any demands on Biden, never spoke up with progressive demands on their own that might have gave people a reason to vote for the Democrats. So you look at a state like Florida, Biden lost it by 3%. The $15 minimum wage won by 22%. That was nominally in Biden's platform, but he never talked about it. His campaign was as economically tone deaf as Hillary Clinton's was in 2016. And basically the result is the same, except at the very top, where Biden barely got through the electoral college. So the message is, progressive Democrats, the Green Party is really not your enemy. You need us. Because if there's not the option of exiting the Democratic Party for the Green Party, progressive Democrats have no leverage inside the Democratic Party. And instead, they spent this whole campaign basically saying, we were spoilers. Rachel Maddow went on MSNBC, called us a Republican op, all this garbage. And they spent more time attacking us than they did the Republicans. And so, they have to, the effort is of this article, and I don't know if they're ready to hear it, even though Biden and Pelosi have given them plenty of reason to, but they need to reevaluate how they relate to the rest of the left. Okay, we're independent, we're not Democrats, but we're not your worst enemies. Yet, our progressive pundits and professors and podcasters and professors, they spent a lot of time, this time not just saying a safe state strategy, vote Democrat in the battleground states and green in the safe states. They had a no state strategy. Vote for Biden everywhere. even in states like California and New York, where Biden was ahead by 25 or 30%. So, they're wondering why they have no power now in the Democratic Party. They gave it away before the election because they silenced themselves. Of course, Angela and I tried to raise progressive demands, but we were blanked out in the media, attacked by the progressive thought leaders. And fortunately, there's social media. And we know that some of the materials put out there by people supporting us got millions of views on TikTok, for one place. And we got, thousands of people come to the Green Party. We got a little over 400,000 votes. That's kind of in the middle range of what Greens have got since we started running for president. We do our best when it's an open seat and the Republican is not scary or scary yet. And there's been a Democrat in office. So that was Ralph Nader in 2000. Of course, he was well known. Couldn't find people say, well, if we only had a celebrity, we could do a lot better. We had the best celebrity we could ever conceive of in Ralph Nader. And he only got 2.7%. And then the second best result was 2016, when you'd come out of 8 years of Obama's cautious centrism, and you had the two most unpopular major party presidential candidates in polling history. So that was a better circumstance. So I think, our 400,000 votes, I think if you look over the last 20 years, it shows actually a growth in our core vote. I mean, we had a similar circumstance in 2004. We barely got over 100,000 votes and got 0.1%. This time we got 0.3%. In 2012, when Jill brought us back we got 0.1% in 2008, we got back up to 0.4%. She got about 470,000. So this vote was, in that range. So I think we need to take heart from that and build on that and talk to our progressive Democratic friends and say, hey, we both want Medicare for all, Green New Deal. We're allies, not your worst enemies. So anyway, check out that article. It'll be up Friday in Counterpunch and see what you think. So what are you thinking, Angela?
I got a real thing about spiders. And as much as I love all of God's creatures, it's a big old spider just came in here. So rather than y'all see me panicking on here, I squished him. I'll feel bad later. All right, well, happy fourth day of Kwanzaa, everybody. Today is Ujamaa, where we are lifting up cooperative economics, which I think is a segue into, something Howie and I were discussing, before the show, before we started streaming. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Also, happy birthday season, Capricorns. What? We up in here. Just had to get that out. And I want to rep Dr. Jared Ball. If y'all are not familiar with Dr. Ball, he is a professor at Morgan State University. Total badass. Check him out on YouTube. He also has at imixwhatilike.org. Completely dope. Y'all want to check him out. There's a book that he just wrote and published, Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power. You could not have a better time for this than now, when there's so much, with this incoming administration and the bootstraps rhetoric that a whole lot of these folks espouse, which is complete and utter bull. Yes, Tina, blessed full moon, may everything that you worked on in the last 6 months come to fruition in the best of ways. And so talking, Howie and I'll touch back on that in a minute. But he did a really dope live stream on YouTube a couple days ago that I think, folks should plug in on. It was absolutely amazing. I want to remind y'all that the African American Policy Forum and the NAACP Legal Defense folks are doing the hashtag Truth Be Told campaign, which is calling on the Biden administration to end the Trump equity gag order, which, they're calling for it to be immediately rescinded. And a couple of things that gag order impacted was the ability of universities and anyone that is the recipient of federal money to be able to even talk about critical race theory, conduct anti-racism and anti-bias trainings. Imagine working for a Department of Housing that receives, federal money, and the problems that you're dealing with are systemic. It is the fault of systemic racism, but you can't say that. You can address what is happening without being able to talk to the root causes, which is, it's completely intentional, and it's actually, this is how this country works. You're looking at the damage that has been caused by something, but you're not able to say what the cause was. So, this may not sound like something that affects, everyday people, but it absolutely does. So, yeah, there's that. I want y'all to be aware that the Truth Be Told campaign is happening. Y'all pull that up. And that's pretty much what I got. We were talking about Dr. Ball's book and the live stream that he did the other day before we started, and just, talking about the fact that, as Chairman Fred Hampton said so long ago, and is more I think more necessary right now, when so many people believe that capitalism is going to save us somehow. Like, if you just work hard enough, if you just do enough. And this idea of desert, like, people, when we're talking about the stimulus, people talking about, well, there's a lot of people that I've seen where it's just like, okay, we'll take what they give us. And it's like, wait, this is your money. They're not giving us anything. And I'm not going to get it anyway. But this is y'all's money. We paid for this. And so just this idea that somehow, the things that make capitalism work are going to somehow, if we just plug into it hard enough, that we're going to prevail. I want people to not think like that. The first thing, folks talk about, when you're talking about getting out of poverty, is entrepreneurship. And yeah, like you said, Sarah, you work 3 jobs, you just do this. No, understand that the things that are stacked against us, which Dr. Ball brought up, this is systemic. The thing that you can't talk about at a university under this gag order. This is systemic. The system is set up to make sure that, when we're talking about how wealth is generated, it's passed down. And people who are wealthy keep that wealth circulating in, within people who are in their same socioeconomic strata. And it isn't intended for people who are, on the bottom, that we get where they are. It doesn't work like that. So, and Howie, I know that you are infinitely better versed at this than I am. But yeah, I mean, it was just a lot that he put out that I think a lot of people need to be thinking about.
Well, I don't know about being infinitely better versed, but we were talking before about, Jared Ball's basically saying you can't shop your way out of racism. And just as much you can't shop your way out of the environmental crisis. The way production happens and how it's distributed determines the distribution of income and people's life opportunities before they even get to spend their money. And, the idea at the tail end of that, we can correct that by shopping here and not there, buying black or buying, organic produce when the system has already caused the damage, is really a diversion from what we need to do. On the other hand, the idea that we can take economic action even when we don't have government policy. What I think of is, when the New Deal first came out, it was affirmative action for white people, basically. They excluded blacks and Latinos from basically de facto by making it agricultural and domestic workers, excluded them from Social Security and protection by the Fair Labor Standards Act. And then there was discrimination in access to things like Works Progress Administration and housing and so forth. And W.E.B. Du Bois responded by writing a book in the 30s called Dusk of Dawn, saying, we're not going to get relief from Roosevelt. We got to go out and organize cooperatives in the black community. And while I don't think that alone, you can't outcompete big business, big capitalist firms. Marx used to say, he said it in the third volume of Capital, that cooperatives are schools of socialism. He was particularly talking about worker cooperatives, where you aren't just working as directed, but you are co-responsible for the management and the distribution of the economic surplus you create, which, educates you on how to manage the economy when we do get to a socialist economic democracy. And public policy can support cooperatives. I think the first city in this country to actually have a municipal policy to support the development of cooperatives was Richmond, California, under a Green mayor, Gail McLaughlin, about a decade ago. And some other cities have adopted this. There's a little bit in New York, there's a little bit in Rochester, New York. Although looking at those programs, they're kind of token and marginal to, most of the money is going to subsidies for the usual suspects, the developers and the real estate business. But what we talk about in the Green New Deal is providing technical and financial assistance to develop worker cooperatives and consumer cooperatives. And there's also an effort in the labor movement that has worked in cooperation with the Mondragon Co-op network in Spain, which is one of the most developed in the world. They call them union co-ops. So the idea is the unions would help organize these things, and the workers would own a business. They'd also have a union, because when you're on a large scale, you're still going to be hiring, managers and supervisors, even if the board is elected by the workers, and issues come up and you need to have the workers organized to deal with their grievances. So that model's out there. And I think that's all stuff worth pursuing. And I hear Jared's book's a little expensive, but I think I'll try to find a way to fit it into my budget.
I just found it on, I forget what site it's on. It's on sale for $19, $19.99. So I'll send you the thing. But yeah, I think it's worth folks having. And if you're not, into the book or whatever, my homie Jason Miles is here. So yeah, he was on. Jason, you were on the live stream the other day too with Dr. Ball, and that's what we're talking about. So yeah, you can chime in on that. But yeah, I want y'all to check him out. And just, it's definitely worth your time. Hey, Ronan.
Did you know that Jared Ball was a Green presidential candidate in 2008?
I think he told me that. Oh, the book is by Dr. Jared Ball. It is The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power. The hashtag MOBP. And I think the Ronan one's question, I'm looking at it in the chat. They asked, hey, how are you? Could the Mondragon model work here?
Oh, look, you're looking at me.
Yeah.
Okay. Mondragon really started in the private sector under Franco and fascism in Spain, and it worked through the Catholic Church with an ethnic minority, the Basques, in a way like Du Bois was talking about for Black folks back in the 30s. And they built up, they got a machine tool business going under the supervision of this priest. And then they set up a credit union. They call it the Bank of People's Labor, which began to finance more cooperatives. And so the whole thing developed out of the private sector by an ethnic minority that was oppressed by Franco. And it was kind of a unique circumstance. I've been involved in co-op development for a long time. I helped organize a worker co-op back in the 70s that did, energy audits and efficiency and solar and wind retrofits to buildings. What we call green jobs today. It was the best construction job I ever had because I made my fair share of the money because we distributed the net proceeds of the business according to our labor. It wasn't given the surplus over a wage to the owner. But I've also been a building contractor, and then you're working 24/7 and killing yourself. You make more money, but it's too much. So the co-op was good, and then later we tried to organize a food co-op in this food desert here, and it didn't succeed. Although we still do food giveaways out of that building we built. But so did a big chain come in just as we opened up, and they failed before we did. So this is just tough economic circumstances. I think the difference between what they developed in Spain and here is we need public policy to support the development of cooperatives, the financial and technical assistance. And there's another co-op network in the Romana Emiliana region of Italy, which developed with the support of left-wing governments that supported co-ops. And that's another model that may be more relevant to what we can do here in the United States. Yeah, we had this question last week, and I'm all for a vote on Medicare for all. I just not sure about the tactics of putting all the heat on, AOC and the squad when they're for Medicare for all. It almost seems like, they're picking on these women, and then they're going to say they, sold out the movement. So I'm a little queasy about that approach. I do want to see a vote on Medicare for all. It'd be good to get everybody on the record. But, why are they picking on the most left-wing members of Congress? And, okay, you do that, then what? Where does that leave us? So that's my attitude about that. We need Medicare for all. The tactics of getting there, I don't have an answer. I'm not sure this one is the answer.
Evan Steichman. Why did socialism become a scare factor from the right? I would gently push back that I don't believe that it came from the right. A lot of the fear mongering and red baiting that I've seen is also from liberals. And y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but red baiting in this country, this country has a history of scapegoating. And if you are someone who's heavily invested in capitalism works for you. This idea of the groups that are, that you're trying to oppress or that you're oppressing, getting together and creating an economic system that basically redistributes everything you've taken from them. Are you going to support that? I don't think so. And that's just like my in a nutshell, like I said, Howie is the encyclopedia, but that's my in a nutshell. I really don't feel like the red baiting is limited to the right. I've seen plenty of liberals do it, particularly during this campaign. We watched it on the debates. I'm not a socialist. That's them. Where they basically batted the word socialist around like it's some sort of an insult. And all Howie and I could say was, no, we're the socialists. Y'all need to get it right. So, it's red baiting is convenient to keep people afraid of something they don't understand. Howie, you could probably give, and I'm sure
Well,
you will
I,
give a
I would
direct.
add to that, it's not just the far right, it's the center left, center right, whatever you want to call the liberals. Joe Biden demonstrated that. He boasted that I beat the socialists, referring to Bernie Sanders, who's really a New Deal liberal. But I think the left has a lot of blame for this because they didn't defend themselves. They didn't say, here's what socialism is. They went into the Democratic Party in the 30s with the communists and later with the socialists and their realignment strategy in the 50s and 60s. So there wasn't an independent socialist movement out there of any size that could say, wait a minute, here's what socialism is about. It's not Stalinism. It's not New Deal liberalism or what they call in Europe social democracy. It's real economic democracy based on common ownership and democratic administration of the major means of production, and explain how that works, and explain how what we got now, you talk about Stalinism. What is a corporation but a private tyranny where you are, you have to do work is directed, you got no say, you leave the Bill of Rights at the, entrance to the workplace. I mean, it's a lot an independent left could say to the American people about here's what socialism really is. And the problem we faced since, the mid 30s is that the left disappeared into the Democratic Party. It doesn't speak and act for itself. And now there's a few people in the Democratic Party saying we're democratic socialists. But actually, they're really, we talk about being ecological socialists. The traditional problem of socialism in the 18th and 19th century was increase production so we can end poverty. Now we got plenty of productive capacity. The problem now is to have sufficient production to meet everybody's basic needs and equitable distribution of that production so everybody's basic needs are met, but do it within ecological limits in a steady state balance with the environment. And so that's why we say eco-socialist or ecological socialist or green socialist, because we got to go beyond what the 19th and 20th century socialism was doing. And these are discussions that I think we have an opportunity to do now because, socialism for a long time was a conversation stopper. Now it's a conversation starter. Nearly 40% of Americans have a favorable view of socialism, even if they're thinking New Deal liberalism. And it's over 50% of people under 40 years of age. So there's a space now for a discussion. And so, yeah, they can red bait all they want. I think that's an opportunity. Okay, let's talk about what socialism really is and defend your position. Defend capitalism. How do you defend the fact that we get a fixed wage and everything else we create goes to the bosses and inequality grows and people are hungry? I mean, right now, there's not enough food in the food banks for people. And they're arguing over whether a one-time $2,000 check or $600 check is needed. We need a lot more than that. So I think we got to put capitalism on the defensive.
And I think
if we keep acting defensively, I remember in the 80s, it wasn't socialism that became a bad word. It was being a liberal. I remember the caucus running away from that. And George H.W. Bush saying in a debate, the caucus is a card-carrying member of the American Civil Liberties Union. And instead of defending civil liberties and freedom, the caucus ran away from it. That's how you end up being red baited out of politics.
And just
stand our ground and speak up for what we believe.
And that's the point I was gonna make. Just to touch on that, something that I've been seeing and getting from a lot of people who are allegedly leftists. well, why don't you soften, if you say socialist, it'll scare people. How about y'all soften it and call it something else? We're not doing that. And y'all are going to hear me say this ad nauseum, the end of this year, going into the next year, all next year. If you are a socialist, stand on that. If you are a leftist, stand on that. Stop retreating from it. You know why you believe what you believe. Don't back off, because the people who are opposing us don't back off. And where there are spaces where we can have these discussions safely, because the minute, tempers are high now. There's a lot happening. But in places where you can safely have this conversation, you can explain what if you are moved to do that. But this thing where we retreat or soften to make other people feel less threatened, we need to not continue that going into this new year. People need to lead that in 2020.
Jeremiah D., what are some measures and proposals you guys have to reform the Green Party to be a stronger party on the local and state levels?
I'm leaving that to the original Green New Dealer. I'm sorry.
Well, I thought you were going to say a original Green, an OG, because I was the first meeting in '84.
You are an OG. I'm glad you're embracing that.
Well, I think we all need to focus on building strong locals and be organizers, not just activists. We're good at activism. Greens show up, we mobilize our people, we show up at the demonstration, the public hearing, the letter writing campaign, the phone banking, but we just mobilize the same people. We need to be organizers who reach new people. And I think I posted on here before, and it was on Facebook and Twitter, about an article that was in Jacobin recently about the Australian Greens, about how they went out and canvassed. And they don't use this term, but it's a big term among organizers in this country, called deep canvassing. So instead of I call it flyby canvassing you do around election time to see who might vote for you so you know who to mobilize on election day, and it's just a brief conversation, and you just find out where people stand. You go out and you knock on the door, or you make the phone call in COVID times, and you say, I'm with the Green Party. We want to hear, what your concerns are and how we could help. And then listen. And a lot of times people will pour their hearts out. And a lot of times they're going to, disrespect the fact that we listen to them, because the Democrats and Republicans aren't showing up on their doorstep and asking them what's going on. And you build relationships, and you hear the concerns and you relate them to the Green platform. And most importantly, as we build out, we got to be present in communities in a way that people know us. I mean, really, who we are by name. And they trust us and they see us consistently active on the issues. And then they're going to be for us at various levels. Some people are just going to vote for us. Some people are going to come out occasionally for our events. Some people want to get involved. But we welcome all levels of participation and support. So we got to, get off our usual blocks and start knocking on some doors in other blocks. And then I think we need a strategic plan in each city or town. We're not just playing. We want to take over our cities and towns. And from that level, build up the state legislatures and Congress. Well, how are you going to do that? What neighborhoods and wards or whatever your, jurisdictions are areas that ought to be supporting the Green Party? Working class people, for example, which is disproportionately people of color and young people, they vote in low numbers. And I think, this is based on a lot of door knocking, not because they're apathetic or they don't care, they're alienated and they feel powerless. So they drop out from participation. We need to show them a way to participate, or at least show that we can fight City Hall and make a difference. And that's how we get a lot more people engaged. So I think the most important thing is we got to build locals that are organizing locals, and canvassing, this deep canvassing year round, not just seasonally around elections. And then have regular activities, educational programs, issue campaigns, as well as election campaigns. And the state parties need to be built on that foundation. We have too many state parties that are just a small group of people, and they're really not doing much. And they're wondering where everybody is. They don't know how to organize. So one of the things we hope to do in, out of our campaign post-election is, provide some materials and information and help on organizing.
Hey, Potatoes. Maybe Potatoes wants to know, do you support Mike Gravel's national initiative or something similar to bring direct democracy to the national level, not just the state level? I was going to say, I can't speak to it.
Okay. We actually had dinner with Mike Gravel, and he gave me his book on the national initiative, his latest edition. And, we had a conversation. I basically support it. My concern is when you do state or national initiatives and you don't have an organized way for people to become fully informed, then the big money's going to do the advertising, and it's the corporate money that's going to largely determine the results in a lot of cases. So there was a political scientist at Princeton, had a book called Strong Democracy, maybe 30 years ago. And he said what we should add to the initiative process is a town meeting process where you go to the town meeting or the neighborhood assembly and you discuss the initiative, and then you can vote so that people hear a real debate from real people instead of, advertising propaganda that they get over the TV and the radio. And as I recall, Gravel thought that was an interesting idea. It's not in his book, but, that's an old demand on the left. Like a number of left-wing platforms going back to the old Socialist Party said, if we're going to go to war, it not only should be declared by Congress, which doesn't happen anymore, but there should be a referendum of the people to see if they want to go to war. So I think it's something worth exploring for sure.
That's Keck. Keck from Kekistan. And he's addressing you specifically, Howie. What are your views on UBI? If you are for UBI, what is going to be the monthly cash out?
I'm for a guaranteed income above poverty. Built into the tax structure is a negative income tax. This is a demand from the 60s that the civil rights movement, as it turned from civil rights to economic human rights, put on the table. Martin Luther King used to say, the real solution to poverty is a guaranteed income. Because what are poor people lacking? Money. It's not that complicated. And we costed this out compared to Yang's $1,000 a month universal basic income, making the guaranteed minimum income double what the current poverty line is, which is really a poor measure of real poverty. And the guaranteed minimum income would cost $400 billion a year. Yang's $1,000 a month to everybody was around 3.8 trillion, as I recall, a lot more. And I don't know why working people who now pay higher tax rates on their labor income than capitalists pay on capital income. That's true in this country for the first time since the Trump tax cuts. Should be, paying taxes to give Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Donald Trump $1,000 a month. So I'm for a guaranteed minimum income above poverty, a basic income above poverty, if you like. And in a sense, it's universal because if you're making more than that minimum income, you've got that income. But the idea that everybody, no matter how rich or poor they are, should get the same amount, I don't agree with. Except in this COVID emergency, where we don't have time to set up a means-tested system. Just get the money out the door on a regular basis for the duration of the, monthly basis for the duration of the emergency, and make it taxable. So at least the rich folks will pay some of it back in taxes.
Hey, Zeke. Zeke wants to know, what do you think about Andrew Yang running for the mayor of New York City?
Well, I don't know if we need more billionaires like Michael Bloomberg being the mayor of New York City. I don't know much about his campaign. I haven't looked at it. There's some progressive Democrats running. I don't know if the Greens are going to run somebody. So that's about all I can tell you. I just know he's running.
Miss Leo, and I just saw this in the chat. Is Stephanie Kelton someone that you would look to for advice on our economic system? Based off her purse discourse, is that a strategy you would align yourself with, or is it not enough?
I don't know what the purse discourse refers to. I do know she's, modern monetary theory person. She has a book out that I read called The Deficit Myth, which I think is very good. Didn't answer all my questions about the policy, but the basic idea is a country like the United States with a sovereign currency doesn't run out of money when it needs to spend money on stuff. And the actual process by which money gets spent is Congress appropriates it, and then the Federal Reserve creates reserves, and that ends up in the Treasury by bonding, so that and the Federal Reserve can buy some of those bonds once they've been sold into the primary market to support that bond sales. And so that's how you get the money. First they spend it, then they try to get it back with taxes. But what you're doing when you put new money in the economy is, while there's a deficit on the government side, there's a credit on the private side. That makes us richer in the private economy. So these are some of the concepts she puts out there. And the basic point is, if we need a Green New Deal, if we need a guaranteed minimum income, if we need Medicare for all, if we need Social Security, we don't have to tax for the money first and then spend it. We can say we're going to spend it, create the money, spend it into the economy, and the economy can do just fine with a deficit. The only limit there is when the economy is at full employment and all productive assets are being utilized. At that point, you don't want to put more money in the economy, because then you're going to have a situation of more money chasing the same amount of goods, and you'll get inflation, which you don't want. So I think, if I was president, I would ask her to be part of my Council of Economic Advisors. I'd also get some more hardcore socialists in there and listen to the team of rivals debate and come up with a good policy.
Hey, Violet. Hey, Boo. Howie, what do you think about conduit hydroelectric energy production? Energy producing tines inside city water pipes. Portland, Oregon is using it, and it looks interesting to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure what tines means, but I think you're referring to, you have water flowing through the water pipes, the water systems of cities. And you can tap that flow to generate electricity like you would with a hydroelectric dam. And, if the engineering and economics work, why not? And you're getting more use out of the water, particularly if it's gravity fed. So you're not, even if you're using pumps, you're getting some of that electricity back with this kind of system. So yeah, I agree. It's interesting.
No, go ahead and sip. I want you to drink that. I'll read it. Hey, Potatoes again. Hey, Boo. What do you think about Professor Richard D. Wolf's run for New Haven mayor in 1985 and Board of Alders in 1987? Do you think he should run in some race as a Green again?
Yeah, I was supportive of that race in 1985. It was one of the earliest Green races, and they ran a slate of 14 candidates. Most of them got double digits running for the Board of Alders. Rick got, I think, about 8% running for mayor. Very progressive program, a lot of environmental and economic justice proposals. And the big one was Tax Yale, which has a lot of tax-free property and uses a lot of city resources and services. And I thought that was a great campaign. And should he run again? He lives in New York City. Maybe he should be the Green candidate for mayor of New York this next year.
Azalea Corcow, and if I mispronounced your name, darling, forgive me. Howie, would you work with Nina Turner if she asked for your help? And also, what do you think of the basically movement for a People's Party?
Well, she's running as a Democrat, and I think progressives and socialists need to be independent of the world's second most enthusiastic capitalist party. So I'm not expecting a call from her. And then, politically, in the past, she's been a big supporter of charter schools and education privatization. Now, Bernie Sanders took a very different position, and she was a spokesperson for him. So maybe she's changed her view on that. And what do I think of the People's Party? Where is it? It's been an idea for 5 years. We've been in discussion with their leadership, at our initiative, and they didn't seem interested in working with us. So, I'm watching it, but I remain to be convinced it's going anywhere.
I want to jump in super quick. Our buddy JS236 is here, and he's asking, question for Howie and Angela. Since this country doesn't want to listen to your message, how about getting together with like-minded people around the world to create a real global coalition? I don't know if a whole lot of people know this. We are part of a Global Greens network. We're doing that. I've actually put in to be on our party's international committee. So yeah, we're doing that. I don't think people realize we're part of a global network. This isn't just, something that we're doing within the States. So I wanted to speak to that.
Yeah, and I was contacted by I think his title is General Secretary of the Green Party of Papua New Guinea.
He got mad at me.
Huh?
But we'll talk. He got mad, made him mad, but we'll talk about that.
He got mad at you?
Yeah, he did. We'll talk about it.
Oh, well.
He's gonna talk to you though.
Okay. I don't know what that's about, but yeah, we're trying to hook up on the phone. And we will. But we've been emailing back and forth.
And also talking to the folks in Australia, which I think a whole lot of folks don't know. We had a call, was it last month, Howie, with, Greens in Australia. And Howie has been sharing an article about, big work that has been done in Queensland. So it was really dope to be on a call with them and then, talking about things that they're moving, similarities between what they're dealing with in Australia versus what we're dealing with here. Not only in, conditions in their country, but also what it means to be a third party. So yeah, we are part of a Global Greens network.
And I know the Australian Greens have supported the Papua New Guinea Greens in their elections. They've come out there and, made speeches for them and so forth.
Keck wants to know, what are your views on the Taliban peace talks?
Well, I think we should have been talking to them all along. We may not agree with their views, but they definitely represent a lot of people in Afghanistan and should be part of a political solution. And my views on the other factions in Afghanistan is they are problematic too, the ones the U.S. has been supporting. A lot of corruption, a lot of ties into the opium trade, a lot of discrimination against minorities by the government as well as the Taliban, a lot of discrimination against women. even though, some people say we're there defending women's rights. It's one thing to put it on paper. It's another, another thing to implement it. So the Afghans have lived with each other for thousands of years. And it's a very tribal society, a very localized society. And the idea that we can come in there, with guns and somehow impose a solution is ridiculous. We've been there not 20 years, not just since we invaded in 2001, but since we backed the earlier version of the Taliban that Osama bin Laden was involved in, before the Soviets even got involved, because they were trying to overthrow the government of Afghanistan at that time, which had been created by a communist coup by these basically university students, which really didn't help things. But we got involved back then. 1978, that's 42 years. We've been involved militarily. And now the country is a basket case. So I'm all for peace talks. Now, in this case, I haven't seen the details. I know that there's supposed to be prisoner exchanges and mutual withdrawal of forces, and both sides are accused of violating it. That's sort of what happens when you have peace talks in the middle of a war. But they should definitely be continued. And I think the U.S. should find a way to get out of there militarily. Let's offer aid, instead of arms. There are parts of the country that are not, that are basically peaceful, where we can provide real, development aid and schools and that kind of thing. And that can be a carrot for other parts of the country to, have peace, so we can come in there and share some of our wealth with them too.
Zeke, our homie Zeke. Zeke Kramer is asking, should sensitivity training employees include critical race theory? Yes. And for the reason that we discussed at the beginning of the program, if you are talking about a problem and you can't discuss the root causes of why those conditions are why they are, you're not doing anything. If we don't understand how we got to the point where we are in this country when we're dealing with race, and if we can't name systemic racism and the way that it works and the way that it impacts institutions that touch people's lives, if we can't do those things, then we're not addressing the problem. And we're very good at that. As a country, we're really, really good at, being able to name off all of the things that the isms that we're fighting, but we don't want to talk about how we got there. It's one thing to say, okay, in a city like Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I'm from, you've got all of the Black folks concentrated into certain zip codes, and the conditions in certain zip codes are absolutely ridiculous. But if we can't say how that happened, the damage that comes from that is that you look at the people who have been victimized by the system as being somehow complicit in their conditions, and they're not. If you can't name the system, the default falls back on, well, what did you do to make this happen to you? And so understanding root causes of why we are dealing with the conditions that we're dealing with are absolutely essential. Howie, what do you think?
I think what you just said.
I saw that in the chat, and I had to say something. It's like, I have to. And Zeke, do you think it's okay that North America, I think, yeah, that's another discussion. This ain't the only America, y'all. I got to get that out. This is not the only America. As a whole, it's a couple of them. This is, there's North America, and this is specifically the United States. Do you think it's okay that the United States is trying to implement Western democracy in countries where it won't work or where it isn't natural to them. No, it isn't okay. It's this idea of American exceptionalism, that the way that we do things in this country is the way everyone should do things in this country. And it is disrespectful, as we see in Venezuela, as we see in numerous countries around the world. This idea of we're going to come in and show you how it's done, which is just what Howie was referencing when, the question about the Taliban. We are not in a position to come in to anybody's country and tell them how to do anything. But this idea of American exceptionalism is harmful. And it's another thing that we don't want to be honest about as a country in this country, that the way that we move and the way that we've interacted with other countries it's harmful, it's toxic. So my short answer to that, absolutely not. How are we going to teach democracy and we ain't even got one here? I mean, come on. Howie, what are your thoughts since I interrupted you?
Well, the idea of Western democracy is Eurocentric. The West didn't invent democracy. You go back through the history of every culture and you find in class societies, lower classes fighting for democracy. In indigenous communities, democratic forms of, popular assemblies. So, the question is not imposing a Western democracy. It's basically the West needs to stop imposing dictatorships. That's what we do when we intervene. Latin America is full of examples of that. Iran, Mossadegh was elected and we imposed a Shah. I could go all over the world giving you examples. The idea that the West is spreading democracy, it's like Gandhi said about Western civilization. It would be a good idea.
I had a feeling we about to get the cane. I feel it coming. I don't see it yet. Yep. The boss put it in caps. All right, Howie, this is the last live stream you and I are doing for 2020, which is like an accomplishment and also a relief because 2020 is almost over. Thank goodness. What are your thoughts?
I don't have a concluding thought yet. How about, why don't you start while I conjure one up?
Fair enough. For anybody that has watched that Match.com commercial with Satan getting a match with 2020, I mean, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. Yeah, so this is the last live stream that we're doing for this year. I think this has been an amazing year. I've called this the year of impossible things. And at the same time, I think it has been a raging dumpster fire in so many different ways. Good God. So I'll leave y'all with, my usual wishes for your safety and your good health. COVID is kicking tail. I have never seen so many funerals as I have seen in the area that I live in. I have never seen this. I need y'all to be safe in every way that you possibly can. Ring in 21 safely. It's not the way we normally do it. It's not going to feel like we normally do it, but nothing is normal. So, I also, my intentions I'll share with you for my new year, because I don't do resolutions. My intentions for 21 are, basically affirmations. I will protect my peace. I will protect my space. I will protect my time so that no matter what is happening in the world around me, I have a still point within myself to stay grounded. And so I want to send all of y'all love, big love. All of y'all that are here with us, all of y'all that's gonna be riding, we riding together in 21. We will be here. And so yeah, I'm inside. Yeah, Diana, is it Diana M16? It's one of our favorite people. But yeah, I'm in South Carolina too. I'm in Florence, and I have never seen anything like this. So I mean, it's there are funerals here every day. I have never seen this. So I'm sending y'all love. I want you to stay safe, and we will see you next year. Howie?
Well, I think what I'll do is answer a couple questions I saw in the comments that deals with this democracy question. Somebody said, I posted an article by Louis Project in 2018, and the way they put it was Wahhabis were supposedly socialists and anarchists. Look, that was a report on a talk by Anand Gopal, who is a socialist who has gone into Syria and tried to find what's left of the democratic revolution. And he was reporting on a trip to Manbij and I forget the name of the two cities, where people were resisting both Assad and the jihadis and trying to maintain democracy, where they had elections. And the fundamentalists came in there and said, we're not for democracy, you can't have elections. And they came in there with their AK-47s, and the whole community resisted them non-violently till the jihadis realized these people aren't governable. We can't tax them. And they left. They did kill a few people, but they won. And that was the kind of thing that Anand Gopal was reporting on. Anand has a article in the current issue of Capitalism, making an assessment of the Arab Spring, particularly Syria. You can read that. And he has a critical analysis of why the democratic revolution failed in terms of his class analysis, its tactics. So you can read that. Now, I think the question also confused what Gopal was talking about with what has been going on with the Kurds in Rojava, where a left-wing movement has created a democratic confederation of communities, and their principles are grassroots democracy, feminism with co-leadership at every level. They are anti-sectarian and ethnic chauvinism. So your religion and your ethnicity, they actually try to include all the ethnicities, which is a good model for the kind of sectarianism they have in the Middle East. They're trying to build a cooperative economy and one that's ecologically sustainable. And they are under assault by Iran, Russia, Turkey, Assad, and the US. And so that's something the left should be in solidarity with. They are really besieged right now. And COVID is hammering them because they're not a recognized state. The UN won't provide help for the hundreds of thousands of refugees that were created by the recent invasion of Turkey, a member of NATO, and NATO acted like they can't do anything about it. So Syria is a very complex place. And like, I don't believe you can say countries are not suited for democracy. There are small d Democrats, particularly the downtrodden classes, that are fighting for a say and power and accountability and better results than what they're getting from the governments. So, my basic take on Syria is it's been a three-way struggle. Repression by Assad. There was an Arab Spring, a democratic uprising, and that was the revolution, and two counter-revolutions. Assad's repression, supported by particularly the Sunni power, Iran, and then Russia later, and then a Sunni intervention by the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia, the supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood out of United Arab Emirates and Qatari. And so this has become a proxy battleground for all kinds of forces. And the thing we got to respect is the people on the ground. And the thing Anand Gopal did in that article I reposted, of a report on that talk he gave, is he actually went out there and talked to the people on the ground. And so I suggest people look at that Catalyst article if they're interested in that topic. So I guess my wishes are for a happy new year and be safe. You know, as Angela said, COVID is out there hitting more people and killing more people than ever. And we got a crazy president on the way out that won't cooperate with the one on the way in. So everything from basic public health measures to getting the vaccine out is being screwed up. And like we've been saying, the two governing parties are presiding over a failed state. So just, take care of yourself out there and have a happy new year.